Elvis Presley sang about a Jailhouse Rock, but we're pretty sure even he couldn't have predicted what would lead to a certain prison rehab program going viral. From questionable clothing choices to burdensome restrictions, these are some of the weirdest prison rules in the world. You might assume that a virtually unguarded island where dangerous criminals roam in relatively luxurious conditions would be one of the most dangerous prisons in the world. But Bastøy Prison Island in Norway is anything but. Bastøy operates completely on a system of trust and respect. The guards are unarmed. The inmates live in cabins where they have their own rooms, cook and grow much of their food, and work various jobs around the island, including operating the ferry between Bastøy and the mainland. They even have access to a tanning bed. The reason behind Bastøy's comfortable conditions is that the island is preparing the inmates for the day that they eventually become free. While they are trusted to largely govern themselves, the authorities are still watching them, and the inmates are carefully chosen from a pool of applicants who are deemed to be genuinely willing to change their ways. What happens to children when both of their parents go to prison? If they happen to be incarcerated in Spain's Aranjuez prison, the answer is simple. The child can simply live with them in a big family cell. But don't worry, these kids aren't being locked in with a bunch of hardened criminals. Aranjuez's family cell program only applies to children under the age of 3. If both of their parents remain incarcerated after they reach that age, then the kids are sent to live with relatives. Until then, though, they get to live in the facility's roomy family cells, complete with toys and the typical amenities of a regular household with young children. And since there are several family cells in Aranjuez, there's no shortage of playmates either. While a prison environment is obviously not the best for a young child, experts consider this method preferable to infants growing up without their parents. However, Spain hasn't expanded the family cell system beyond Aranjuez. Forcing prisoners to wear pink underwear was one of the more visible parts of the tenure of Joe Arpaio, sheriff of Maricopa County, Arizona. Arpaio has embraced the nickname of America's Toughest Sheriff, and he's also courted controversy, as he's been criticized for everything from racial profiling to oppressing minorities. Maricopa's jails originally distributed regular white underwear to their inmates, but after Arpaio found out that those were disappearing, he changed the color of all inmate-issued underwear to pink as a theft deterrent. This also applied to blankets, socks, undershirts, and even handcuffs.
Took a lot of criticism for that. It did not deter me.
But the era of the pink undergarment in Maricopa County was ultimately fairly short. When Arpaio's successor Paul Penzone was elected sheriff in 2016, he soon started doing away with his predecessor's policies, including the pink underwear. As for Arpaio, he was pardoned by President Donald Trump in 2017 before he even received his sentence for criminal contempt of court related to illegal racial profiling practices. Countless movies and TV shows have taught us that when you end up in prison, you're taken to a cell that's been pre-selected for you, and that's that. That is, unless you behave badly enough to warrant solitary confinement.
Any man not in his bunk at 8 spends the night in the box.
But at San Pedro Prison, things are a little different. Located in La Paz, Bolivia, San Pedro is notorious for looking pretty much like every other impoverished neighborhood in the area, complete with shops, services, and even whole families. The only difference is that the entire area is surrounded by decidedly prison-like walls. However, the relative luxury of an everyday environment comes at a price. If a prisoner is willing or able to pay, then they can live in a better area in a nicer cell. The more luxurious cells are comparable to hotel rooms or apartments, and the areas they're located in have all sorts of amenities that you'd expect from a nice rustic neighborhood. The need to make ends meet and the demand for goods and services has resulted in a fairly complex economy, people specializing in jobs just as they would outside of prison. And since there are no guards within the walls, the prisoners also effectively govern themselves. In some countries, dancing in the wrong place can potentially land you a prison sentence, but in others, prison is where the dancing really begins. In 2008, the Dancing Rehabilitation Program of the Cebu Provincial Detention and Rehabilitation Center in the Philippines made headlines thanks to a viral video of the inmates dancing to Michael Jackson's Thriller. This wasn't a one-off performance, but instead part of a program that security consultant Byron Garcia introduced in 2007 to keep the prisoners active and prevent violent incidents as part of a larger reform of the facility. It was originally Garcia who posted the prisoners' performances on YouTube in an effort to raise awareness of the program's success. The prisoners' drills last up to 4 hours a day and include elaborately choreographed mass routines that fill the prison yard with action. As Patrick Rubio of the Philippines Bureau of Jail Management and Penology told ABC News in 2007, there's a time to dance and a time to sing. If they say laughter is the best medicine, how much more for dancing? In addition to the viral videos, the program has led to public performances and even inspired a musical. It's been successful enough that as of 2023, the mass dancing sessions were reportedly still going strong.
It is what the experience meant to each inmate that truly mattered.
The United States prison system is somewhat infamous for banning books in correctional facilities. Since there aren't any overall guidelines about censoring reading materials, pretty much anything and everything could be deemed questionable. Even a book that isn't on the list of forbidden titles might not reach the hands of an inmate who would like to read it. Occasionally, something as simple as the book's physical size or the color of the package it's mailed in can make it unacceptable. Out of the many literary limitations that states have imposed on their prisoners, the secure vendor program that New York piloted in 2018 is among the strangest. The policy initially ruled that only items from carefully vetted vendors could be given to inmates. However, the actual selection was debatable. As author Molly Crabapple pointed out, they offer 5 junk sex novels, 14 Bibles and religious books, 24 drawing coloring books, 21 puzzle books, 11 guitar, chess, how-to books, 1 dictionary, 1 thesaurus. No other books can be sent in. What's more, the approved vendors' prison prices were considerably higher than usual. The state soon reworked the program to offer more selection. Unfortunately, though, when it introduced an updated version of the secure vendor program in 2022, it immediately cost prisoners their access to most homemade care packages from their loved ones. It shouldn't come as a surprise that life in a Russian prison isn't exactly a walk in the park. From late opposition leader Alexei Navalny to basketball player Brittany Griner, many high-profile individuals have famously experienced the harsh conditions in the country's prison system. And those conditions aren't necessarily much better in the nicer facilities. As for the poor souls who end up in some of the more horrifying penal colonies, it can be outright brutal. And sometimes even the obligatory initiation sequence can be quite awful. In Yaroslava prison near Moscow, violence and prison deaths are commonplace, and the new arrivals find out very quickly what kind of place they're entering. The so-called intake ceremony is an elaborately constructed, systematic form of violent hazing that takes place in a narrow, low hallway that leads to a cramped room. The inmates are ushered into the room, where they're beaten to within an inch of their lives with heavy metal music playing in the background. The reason for all this is a simple one: control. By breaking the new inmates in like this, the guards establish dominance. This particular prison rule isn't completely unregulated, though, as a guard who kills a prisoner may be subjected to an investigation. Regardless, the intake is still a terrifying part of life in Yaroslavl, and one that most prisoners would surely be more than happy to skip.
It's like thanks, but no thanks.
During the hottest months of the year, many United States prisoners discover just how horrible it is that their facilities don't have air conditioning. Despite multiple court rulings that prisons can't subject inmates to extreme heat or cold, a large number of the country's prisons have no air conditioning whatsoever. Some estimates indicate that as of 2023, as many as 44 states had at least one prison without AC. Living through a hot summer without air conditioning is especially worrisome in a prison, as inmates have no way to seek refuge from the heat. People have reportedly passed out, flooded their cells in desperation, and even died of heat stroke. The heat can also cause problems with internal organs, which can lead to serious medical conditions. Prisoners are particularly vulnerable considering their uncertain access to cooling methods. They're not the only ones feeling the heat. This situation also affects staff members who are understandably wary of working in these sorts of conditions. As Texas State Representative Terry Canales noted to the New York Times in 2023, the truth is the state is paying millions of dollars a year in heat-related lawsuits, and we're facing chronic corrections officer shortages. Being in prison in and of itself is a punishment, but nobody is signed up to be tortured.
We shouldn't be cooking prisoners to death. The end.
In popular culture, cigarettes in prison often go hand in hand, and even if you don't smoke, they're good for currency. This is often true in real life as well, and even prisons that have restricted smoking have had to deal with the ensuing tobacco black market. Of course, though, tobacco isn't exactly good for anyone's health. In 2022, the World Health Organization deemed prison smoking a major public health issue and estimated that up to 90% of prisoners use tobacco products. Some prisons have addressed the issue with various bans and prohibitions, but certain types of e-cigarettes were also still allowed, although their use was heavily restricted to certain areas. Still, it's easy to imagine that things were a bit tense in the state's correctional facilities that summer. Solitary confinement is hardly unheard of when it comes to prison, but involuntary isolation for a prolonged period of time is no joke. Lack of exercise and activity can cause acute pain, trembling, and cardiovascular problems, and there are many other physical and mental issues associated with solitary confinement. The experience can be so overwhelming that it can even lead to suicide. For reasons that baffled even experts, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice added another quite literal layer of discomfort to female inmates in solitary confinement. The state's prisons had been dressing these prisoners in white gowns as opposed to the more traditional prison uniforms that their male counterparts received. What made the situation even questionable was that the prison only provided the gown, underwear, and socks. Other items of clothing were available, but the inmates had to pay for them. So if you didn't have the money, it meant that you couldn't have pants, boots, or even shower towels. Experts couldn't discern any possible possible reason to enforce the gown policy besides the possibility of the gowns being a means to deliberately humiliate the inmates, as University of Colorado criminology professor Vivian Aranda Hughes told Texas Public Radio in 2023. To my knowledge, this is the only state that I've heard of doing this. This is the first time I'd ever heard of this. The peculiar gown policy finally ended in 2023. If you or someone you know is struggling or in crisis, help is available. Call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org.